James Davenport, Project Manager from the National Association of Counties. The webinar today is conducted through the NACO project, Building County Capacity to Reduce Wildfire Risk in the Wildland-Urban Interface, which was kicked off last year. I hope you find this webinar, but webinars overall, as a helpful tool in the exchange of information. With counties facing major budget challenges, NACO is actively using the webinar and providing information and an opportunity for open discussion for our members. As we begin our webinar, we have a few quick housekeeping items. The questions box and raise your hand buttons are on the right-hand side of your screen. To hide or unhide the box, please click the two small arrows in the top left corner. If you are having technical difficulties, please send us a message, and we will write to you privately to resolve the issue. This webinar will be recorded and stored for future viewing. To access NACO's recorded webinar collection, please visit www.naco.org/webinars after today's program. Also, we want to reiterate that completing the webinar evaluation is very important to us. Similar to our face-to-face forums and workshops, evaluations are an essential tool for NACO to assess the webinars and look for ways to revise them based on our member needs. We will hold questions till the end of the webinar, but you can type in your question at any time during the program. The project and the webinar are supported through the U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. This session is also co-sponsored by the NACO Wildfire Advisory Group, a group composed of county elected officials, planners, emergency managers, and fire professionals, as well as representatives from state and federal agencies and key stakeholder groups, to oversee activities of the project and review publications produced through this project. But the overall goal is to provide technical expertise and guidance as we progress through the project period. One of the products produced through the project under the guidance of the advisory group is the NACO Wildfire Information Clearinghouse, which was launched in June of 2009. It consists of example development codes, CWPPs, land use policies, and key resources, including a link to the Extension Wildfire Information Network that includes a homeowner education piece which describes approaches to reduce the risk of wildfire damage to homes. The link to the Wildfire Clearinghouse is www.naco.org/wildfire. Now, before we begin, we're going to launch our first polling question to get a sense of how many people are actually participating in the webinar. So the question is, how many people are participating in this webinar from a computer? 1, 2, 3, or more? Okay. So it looks like we've got a good number participating in the webinar today. That's good. Many of us know that urban sprawl and rural appeal have brought more residents into the wildland-urban interface. That means more homes, properties, and lives at risk from wildfire. Both county officials and insurance companies take wildfire and the safety of their residents very, very seriously. First and foremost, the industry is responsible for compensating fire victims. A home or business damaged because of a fire is covered under a fire insurance policy, and the victims are compensated promptly. This coverage is valid for both urban fires, wildfires, and interface fires. It is becoming clear that prudent land use planning and adequate resources for wildfire management are critical. Most work by insurers and the policy research community emphasizes the important role of land use planning. Each year, more and more residents are living in areas of hazard risk, increasing the risk not just for wildfire, but other disasters such as hurricanes, earthquakes, flooding, winter storms, and tornadoes. Hazard risk needs to be an increased part of county and local planning efforts. What I hope becomes clear in this webinar today is the importance that all partners be involved in the wildfire mitigation process and identifying approaches to reduce vulnerability to wildfire, and that the insurance industry itself is a natural ally in the promotion of prudent land use planning and identifying adequate resources for wildfire management. First, we will hear from two representatives from the insurance industry to provide the industry's perspective and then 2 representatives from Washoe County and Nevada to discuss the county role. To kick things off, I would like to introduce Brenda O'Connor, who is the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs for the Institute of Business and Home Safety. IBHS is an independent nonprofit applied science research and communications organization funded by property insurers and reinsurers. Ms. Connor will discuss the various wildfire risks facing residents and business owners around the country and the importance of undertaking appropriate wildfire mitigation measures. Brenda?
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. As James just said, I've been asked to talk today about the wildfire-related challenges that we're facing in the country today, which are very, very significant. We've got wildfire risk that is very, very high in 38 states around the country. 100 million people in the continental U.S. are now living in what we call the wildland-urban interface. The Fire Services calls this the WUI, and what we mean by that is there's literally a line where you've got a wildland area that abuts a residential or commercial area. 17 million homes have been built there since the 1990s, so you can see the amount of structures that we're talking about. It's very, very significant. As a result, IBHS has been joining with a number of different fire service organizations around the country, trying to figure out how we can work best together to reduce those risks. On your screen, you see a list of the different organizations that we've been working with, ranging from the International Association of Fire Chiefs, the Fire Marshals, the Congressional Fire Services Institute. We also work with a lot of fire researchers so that we can learn from them what kinds of things will help to better protect our structures. We conducted a very large research project last year based on the Witch Creek wildfire that occurred in San Diego back in October 2007. It was a devastating fire. Some of you who are in California may remember it. What we found was our engineers went in, and obviously this was after the fact, and it was really interesting because it turns out that direct flames are not the problem here when it comes to wildland fires. The problem is embers, and by embers we mean firebrands. They are blowing and getting into structures through vents and other openings and then starting the fires from within the actual structures. So what we learned was that we've got to locate homes and businesses at least 15 feet apart from each other. Otherwise, you're going to get the embers jumping from one building to another. And the other thing we found out was that it's very possible to protect properties against wildfire if we take a 360-degree approach to protection. By that we mean you've got to look at your surroundings, your landscaping, and your structures. One of the things that we're excited to talk with you all about today is the fact that public officials play obviously a huge role in helping to better protect our property from wildfire. So we'd like to talk with you a little bit about that today. And the last thing I wanted to mention is there's no question that a community-wide approach is by far the best approach to protecting property. You know, whatever your neighbor does is going to affect you, whether that's a home or a business or whatever, and whatever you do is going to affect your neighbor. So again, the community-wide approach is definitely what IBHS is recommending. As I said, embers are by far the biggest problem when it comes to perpetuating wildfire. One of the things that IBHS is doing is constructing a new research center in South Carolina, and we're going to be actually recreating wildfire within the research center. We're going to work with the National Institute of Standards and Technology to generate embers and try to figure out how we can best keep them out of structures. Now, what I wanted to spend just a little bit of time with you about today is the 3 steps to evaluating fire risk. As I mentioned before, the structure, the surroundings, the landscaping. Those are the three areas that we've got to look at. A lot of these things most of you probably already know, so I won't go into too much detail, but again, those are the three areas that we really found through this research that have got to be evaluated in order to know what the fire risk is in your area. Very first thing, whether it's a home or a business, is to have a Class A roof. That's the best defense that you can have against wildfire. Class A is defined by Underwriters Laboratory, and it refers to the particular type of roofing that you have. We know, for example, that wood shakes are obviously extremely flammable, so you don't want to have a wood shake roof if you live in a wildland-urban interface area. The other things that you need to consider are tile roofs. As you can see in this slide, right here on these ends, we call these the openings where the embers can get in. They're called bird stops, that you can seal them up and keep the embers out. There are so many ways that embers and firebrands can get into structures. It's amazing because obviously they're small, they're fast, and they're hot. So this is one of the areas that you need to pay attention to. Another terrific thing to do is using tempered glass windows. Dual panes are definitely the most effective. There's no question about it, whether you're, again, talking about a business or a residence. That's going to be the best bet for keeping that structure safe. Let's talk a minute about surroundings. We've got decorative items, signs, flags. People store a lot of materials outside, and also there are various outbuildings. One of the things we know is that all of the surroundings to a structure will actually act as a wick, literally bringing the fire right into the structure. In this case, you can see we've circled the canopy here, the awning. If you live in a wildland-urban interface, this is a very dangerous thing to have on your structure. Here we have a ranch situation where you've got flammable hay right next to a barn. Very dangerous because that could go up, in seconds, literally. Now, here is something interesting. We found this a lot in the Witch Creek fire in San Diego. People didn't realize that, they'd have a wheelbarrow with wood in it, for example, for their indoor fireplace, and they kept it right next to the house. Well, that's literally the kind of thing that is just going to combust as soon as embers or flames get anywhere near it. So you want to make sure that those things are kept a very safe distance from your structures. Now, in this slide, you can see a play structure. It's very, very common to see these very close to homes, and if they're wood particularly, they will be very flammable and again will act as a wick, bringing the fire right into the home. Landscaping, something that Californians, I will say, have done a terrific job of learning what kinds of plants, trees, shrubbery, etc. are best suited to wildland-urban interface areas. And some other states as well. I shouldn't only point out California. Arizona, Montana, a number of the western states have done a terrific job with this. Colorado as well. And you'll hear from Carol Walker next talking about that. One of the most difficult plants that we deal with when it comes to wildfire are palm trees. Palm trees are, just talk about wicks. I mean, they go up so quickly, and really most people, including businesses and homeowners, have palms that are much too close to their homes or business. You don't want to have it too close because it will just literally set that place ablaze. Again, you can see these are all instances where palm trees have just fueled a really serious wildfire. Another thing I wanted to mention today are building codes. Those of you who are county officials are very familiar with building codes. This is an area where IBHS has been doing a lot of work because strong, modern codes really, really help when it comes to protecting property from wildfire. Again, the things that I just mentioned